my understanding, starting in the fall, you guys are going to take the spent grain that we use to make beer, and then you guys are going to start making dog treats. Is that right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Super excited about that. So right now, when we're done brewing beer, we take our spent grain and farmers come and get it, and they use it to feed their cattle, pigs, and that's how they feed their farm animals with that spent grain so that we don't waste it, because we have hundreds of pounds of spent grain. So let's go inside. The only thing I would ask... All right, pretty cool, right? Yeah. All right, so this is where we make beer at Dog and Pony Show. So this is our official brew house, okay? This is where the beer is actually brewed. This is our brewer's platform. All these tanks are called fermentation tanks. So if you see a tank with a cone on the bottom, that tank is used for fermenting beer.
Like this.
So how do we ferment beer, and what do we do? Well, we start by brewing the beer on these vessels. So this is, in the brewer's world, this is called a mash tun. Okay, and what we do is we take hundreds of pounds of grain and we put it inside of this vessel and we steep it with hot water. So has anyone ever made coffee or tea? Right? Yep, I love my coffee in the morning. I love tea too, for that matter. You're showing my age there. So when you make coffee and tea, what do? What goes inside of the coffee or the tea? What do you think it is?
First, we will fertilize the coffee made
So what liquid do you put in with the tea though to make it tea?
to make water.
Hot water, right?
Hot water, yes.
So that's what we do. We take all that grain, and inside the grain we steep it with hot water. And when you do that, it draws sugar out of the grain. So we want those sugars. Those sugars are really good. That's how we make beer. And that sugar water that we make before we add yeast to it is called wort. So in the brewer's world, wort is the sugar water that we ferment into beer. When we're done steeping that grain and drawing the sugar, we take this liquid and we use this pump and some of these hoses that you'll see hanging on the tanks, and we draw that wort into this tank. Now if you look underneath this tank, you'll see there's a burner under there. Do you see it?
Yes, I
All
saw
right,
that.
turn it on. Here it comes. All right, so what we do is we take that wort, which is sugar water, and it fills up, this is what we call the boil kettle. So this is the mash tun, this is the boil kettle. Okay, our wort is inside the boil kettle and we're gonna heat it and boil it. And we do that to kill any bacteria that would be inside the wort. We don't want any other organisms besides the organisms that we want to put inside the beer. So we're trying to sterilize the beer by boiling it. Now during that time, we might also add hops. Has anyone heard of the word hops before?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so hops are, it looks like a little flower, and it's got a lot of resin to it, almost like I guess you could compare it to like a closed dandelion. But the hops are what give certain beers their flavors, and we can add them into the boil. And during that time, once we've boiled the beer and the beer is reached boil, we're then going to transfer it out after about 60 minutes into the whirlpool. Okay? So this tank in particular, we shoot the beer into the whirlpool. And what happens is, there are two ports inside here. One is on the side. All the proteins, all the pieces of grain, all the hop coagulant gathers in the middle, and we draw the liquid from the side. We want you to drink the liquid. We don't want you to drink all the little pieces of grain and hops and things that came with it. Okay, once we've done that, we take the liquid from the whirlpool and we run it through this. It looks very tiny right here. It looks like kind of like a radiator, but that's called a heat exchange. Okay, so through one side we're putting cold water, and that chills the plates. Through the other side we run the hot wort through. Now here's why we do that. This wort is typically about 150 to 160 degrees, pretty close to sterile. We're about to add yeast to the beer, or to the wort. So when you add yeast into wort, the yeast organisms eat the sugar inside the wort, and that is what creates two things, alcohol and CO2. So those are the byproducts. If anybody in here that likes science, when a yeast eats sugar, it creates CO2 and alcohol, right?
Yes.
Okay, once we run it through and pull it down, you can come over here to this side. Keep coming around, guys. Come on through, come on through. All right, so inside these tanks is beer. So this beer was put in here on May 21st, 2004, right? So we introduced the yeast with the wort. And what happens when yeast gets in with sugar? It creates alcohol and CO2. This is called an airlock, or this bucket shows you. If you just give the hose a tiny shake, you'll see the bubbles that come out. That's the CO2 inside the tank coming out, right? When the yeast is done eating, you see the bottom of this tank. It's shaped like a cone. Looks like an ice cream cone, kind of. All the yeast goes dormant and falls to the bottom of the tank. Okay? So inside this tank, in the bottom right now, is a bunch of yeast. The same kind of yeast, if you pull it out, then it looks like if you have any bakers in here that make bread. It's got all those same qualities. The liquid is what we draw off the top. Okay? And we take that liquid and we have to carbonate the liquid. Because remember, now we have beer. We have yeast that has eaten sugar and created alcohol and CO2. Well, we need the beer to carbonate, otherwise it would be still or flat. So we have to transfer the beer out of this conical fermenter into what we call a bright tank. So we're going to walk around to the other side and I'll show you guys the bright tanks, okay? We have two bright tanks that we can carbonate beer in.
Ooh, look at that.
So this is how we add the bubbles to the beer. If you've had soda pop or seltzer water or sparkling water, you know it has carbonation in it. These tanks are what we use to carbonate the beer. So the tank you saw, we're going to draw that liquid but leave the yeast. And the liquid we now have is uncarbonated beer. And we're going to put that beer inside this tank. This would be closed. You can look inside the tank if you want. Don't get too close. And then when it's done inside this tank, we then start to fill kegs. Okay? So, this is a half barrel of beer. This tank holds 7 barrels of beer. So how many half barrels would I get? This is 1/2 barrel of beer, but this would hold 7 barrels. How many? 14 kegs of beer comes from this tank, right? This is a 14 barrel bright tank. So how many half barrels of beer did I get from this tank? 28. Very good. Right? So 28 kegs of beer if I fill this one. 14 kegs of beer if I fill this one. So this is called a half barrel. So 1 full barrel of beer is that much beer. That's a lot of beer to drink. Yeah? It is a lot of beer. So when we fill this, we have to put it somewhere. So where should we put it? We have to put it in the cooler. Do you want to do the honors and pull the cooler arm, man? And yep, and it'll slide to your right. Yep, just keep pulling it, keep pulling it.
Wow. It's a secret wall. Wow, you can feel the cold air.
It's a giant refrigerator.
Look at all that beer. You want to take a look?
All right, so those are kegs of beer. What else can we put beer in?
I don't know.
We can put beer inside cans, right?
Yes.
So here's our canning machine.
Look at that.
So what happens is we take these cans of beer, they're 16 ounces, they're cleaned out cans, they go down this line, this belt turns on, this is hooked up to the tank, and it goes right to these fill heads. You see these 3 little lines right here?
Yes.
Okay. These lift up, and and then the cans go underneath, and they fill the cans with beer. When the cans are full, they get pressed to the side, and they come this way through, so now these will be full of beer, and they come right here. What are these? That's the lid for the can, right? Okay, that lid drops down onto this can and goes through the line. And right underneath here is a can seamer. So when it comes out, it seals the top of the can, and then it pushes it out right here to us. And then we would label the cans right here with this machine. Okay? So when the can is done, you have a 16-ounce can of beer. So, fast math, I don't have my phone on me. I know it would be 126 16-ounce cans inside 1/2 barrel of beer.
Wow.
Right? So I can do 126 16-ounce cans comes from that 1/2 barrel. Right? It's a lot of beer. There you go. If you ever think you can drink a can of beer, maybe you'll think about it again. When those are done, this is our labeling machine, so we can lay the cans on here with a label, and then spins this, and then puts the label on the can. Okay, and that's how we label our cans of beer, and then they go into the cooler. Cool. Okay, what's right next to the barrels? What are those? Cans are in there. How many cans do you think are on that pallet?
Wow.
Few more than 16. Few more than 400.
500.
More than 300. More than 500.
1,000.
More than 1,000.
More than 1,000.
2,000.
2,000.
More than 2,000. A little more than 5,000. 6,000 fans.
6,000 cans.
6,000 cans on that pallet. So we use those throughout the year to fill up and then sell out to our customers. Cool? Yeah. Yes?
Where is the spent grain that we are going to use? Where does that come from? Is it the bottom of these big ones, or?
Last question yet. So, here's what's going to happen. You guys are wondering, where are we going to get the grain for our dog treats, right? I'll show you how this is going to work. We'll do one more walk. What a great question that is. Come with me. All right, if you look on the ground, you can see a little bit of the dry grain from the last batch we brewed. The cool thing about the drains on the floor are that when we're brewing and cleaning things up, it makes it really easy to clean everything because we have our drains set in the floor. So, we said this is the mash tun, and when we're done with the grain, and we've drained all the warts, which is the sugar water, out of the tank, this will be filled with spent grain. So spent grain is grain that's cracked open. We've taken the sugar out of it, and that grain now is just kind of soggy, wet. It almost feels like, I guess like coarse sand. It has that same kind of texture. We scrape it out, and we fill up these trash cans with it. And then we set them outside for the farmer to come and get, and we dump them into his barrel, and he takes them and gives them to his pigs or cows. We're going to give you guys, I would assume, a barrel or so, depending on how many treats you need every time we brew. Now, you can kind of smell, I mean, this is not the best smell, unfortunately, so you might not want to smell it, but spent grain smells kind of like stinky feet.
Ooh.
Yeah, so the longer it sits, they will not. But what happens is, if you were to leave that grain after it's spent in the barrel with the moisture, it would actually naturally ferment. So if you leave it too long, you technically could get your pigs and cows drunk, I guess. So not that you want to do that. But you don't want to leave spent grain out too long, because it will ferment and have a strange smell and some alcohol to it. So when you're done, we'll have these for you guys so that you can come and get your grain and then take it back to class. And you'll mix that with probably yogurt and peanut butter and bake them and make healthy dog treats. Very healthy for dogs. Cool?
Yes.
Very cool.
Awesome, guys.
All All right, so I'm here at Dog and Pony. This is their spent grain, and it's like an oatmeal consistency, as you can see. And we just filled up just 2 kind of large-sized Tupperware container full of the spent grain. We're going to dehydrate it in the oven, I believe, and we'll go from there.